Hello everyone, James Donaldson here, and I'm bringing you a video on why people are putting red dots on pistols. Is it a fad? Does it actually make sense? Do you need to do it? Let's talk about that, especially my favorite word in the firearms industry, need, right after this. So, diving right into the meat and potatoes. Why? Well, as many people say, it's more natural. What does that mean, right? Because people that have been lining up their sights on the target for a long time, it's pretty natural. So, let's talk about what natural means. Well, when you're lining up your sights, iron sights, you're basically putting two things and you're having to make them even between your eye, your aiming eye, and the target. So that means that I basically have to stare at the target and I'm putting things in the way, but I have to be organized about it. So can't be too low, can't be too high, gotta Goldilocks it just right. So when you have any kind of optic, so a scope, a red dot, holographic optic, whatever, you're only putting one thing. So instead of lining up four things, you're only lining up three. And this is very easy because as you look at what you're going to be aiming your weapon at, red dots on the target. So, natural. That's what people mean by natural. Now, let's also talk natural progression. This is where it really made sense to me and where I thought, okay, I'm ready to get in on this. So, let's compare it to another type of gun. Here's a rifle. Well, it's a pistol. So, ATF. So anyway, I've got iron sights on here, right? But what's my primary? A red dot. When talking about, especially defensively, because people can really do whatever they want in terms of having a gun to go plink or just play around at the range, or maybe they buy a gun because they just like it. Well, it doesn't really matter what you do. I think I probably won't ever be at this point because I don't want to, but if I ever had, several rifles, I definitely would have ones that were just iron sights for various reasons. So, but in the interest of defense, as I digress, the interest of defense, so to me, that's making a weapon as easy to use and user-friendly as possible, and simple to use and smooth. So, for a defensive pistol, wouldn't I want to continue making it easy to use? I mean, that's after all why people are putting any kind of optic on a rifle, and even a shotgun. I'll roll in pictures of my turkey shotgun. That's got an optic on it. So, doesn't it just make sense? Yeah, I know. Now I got you. Of course, now you're going to do all your research on what red dot to buy. Video on that next. Alright, so now let's talk aiming and getting used to it, because people hear other people say, and people say, that it does take some getting used to. And that is, for the most part, accurate. So, pretty much, when you think about it, compare it to a different gun, say with sights lower, that when you bring your weapon up, it should be coming up to a place that's predetermined by you having practiced. So you shouldn't be trying to figure out where to line your pistol up every time. You should pretty much be able to close your eyes, present your pistol, open your eyes, and pretty much be on. I almost was, and this isn't even a gun I use very often. So, now that being said, when you go and raise the point at which you want to look through to see your target, i.e. the dot is going to be sitting higher up here, so you're going to have to kind of alter how you're presenting your weapon, if that makes sense. So instead of aiming along this plane, if I had normal sights, I would then be aiming along, I've got the raised iron sights, now I'm aiming along the higher plane where there's a red dot. So yes, you got to make sure you can find it, because if it's just off enough, well, I can't even see the red dot right now. Of course, I'll roll in some pictures of acquiring a red dot or a video, but the point being that it's going to take some practice, because it increases, it complicates it a little bit, but just a little bit, and you get rid of that complication once you practice through it. So whereas you should be practicing with a firearm anyway, especially a defensive one, well, you should still be practicing with this. Now, another thing I like is basically I was able to set myself up for success by putting the iron sights, the raised iron sights on here first. So before I had the optic, I was still kind of figuring out what I wanted. I at least got myself starting by presenting the gun a little bit lower. It's exaggerated for visual effect. Presenting it lower because then it was going to be that much easier to transition to the dot. Plus, when I line up my iron sights as they are, and this isn't totally plain, it's just kind of how it worked out, I can see the dot. So, even if I was rusty when I first got the dot, in terms of practicing and presenting, I still was going to see my dot just presenting the way I was presenting before the dot, if that makes sense. So, finally, what I really like about what this did, and I didn't really think about this happening, is when I put this up, I'm basically looking at the target and just seeing a red dot. I'm very good, and I don't know if this is common or not, I would figure it's common, but I'm pretty good at just looking through at my target and only worrying and involving in my immediate paying attention to it vision what I need to aim, so like a red dot. So busy scopes, not a problem for me. Having the iron sights, I did go low profile, so basically blacked out in the rear, and then non-highlighted, but just simple one little dot of tritium in the front, just to line up right, which I'll talk about iron sights, probably another video. But anyway, so all that kind of worked out in my favor, and I really like seeing a clean sight picture versus one that's covered up from here down. Also, you really got to understand how to use your iron sight. Some people want to stack dots, do things like that. This just simplifies it right out of the gate. So if you're new to pistols, I'm not going to discourage you from going right out of the gate with a red dot, right? I mean, fair enough. But I will say, and I'll talk about this later, you still need to be practicing with your iron sights. You need to be familiar with them. So, anyway, next. Now let's jump into caveats and variables. So, one thing I had no idea was going to happen until it did was basically, I haven't been wearing glasses and I should have been. So, looking at something and then looking at the sights, because I shoot both eyes open, it pretty decent, or at least I thought, just because I don't see distance well. I see up close fine, don't see distance well. Target was kind of blurry. So I was glad to get glasses because they sharpened up that image downrange. However, the problem is now my iron sights are a tad blurry. Not the end of the world, but I will tell you that having the red dot and putting that on there, the glasses sharpen up the red dot. It's a way sharper image. Otherwise it's a fuzzy big dot. It's a couple ml way bigger. Now it's nice and like a scalpel, just like I like things. Precise. So, glasses changed the game. The red dot helped with glasses. So if you wear glasses for distance, you may consider getting a red dot because it's going to help you aim faster. I'll roll in some footage. Anyway, yeah, so Well, another thing to consider that I didn't even know. So let's talk the optics themselves. So a good pistol optic is going to be way more expensive than a rifle optic, and that's because you've got technology like housing design, which we'll touch on, enclosed versus open, and then you've got resilience, so how strong it is and how durable it is, and of course battery life is a big one too. There are a lot of non-starters for me in guns themselves, but also accessories of guns, right? If it's not going to last long, or it's not going to be durable, or the battery's going to die after 3 hours, why am I putting it on there anyway? Because I'm hardly ever going to use it. And I probably don't want to plan on relying on it in an important life or death situation. So, to me, those things are very important. So, now they're going to take all that stuff I just mentioned, and they're going to make it really small. So here, kind of a silly thing I did. I put a rifle optic on this pistol. Haven't fired it yet. You'll see videos on this, and you can check out my Instagram to see, of course, pictures of it, more pictures. So, Glock 40, 10 mil. I put a pistol optic on it. Of course, iron sights can't be used at all. But that said, now we go and we take all that technology and we make it smaller, lighter, yet very, very durable. So material is another thing. Speaking of durability and weight and all that, many manufacturers, I would say most, are using aluminum. They're pretty successful with them. Now there are a couple companies, actually, I know Holosun for sure is using titanium on 2 of their products. One of them being the 509T, which is what I have. Got a couple of these. So, titanium is a lightweight material. It's also incredibly durable. To me, I would always be willing to pay the extra amount of money. Am I, Special Forces dude, raiding Taliban outposts? Well, I guess nobody is right now, but you understand what I'm getting at. No, I'm not. I'm absolutely not. But I'm the kind of guy that likes to buy something that will handle well more than what I'm going to throw at it. Because sometimes there's flukes. Things happen. Anyway, that's why I like the idea of something like titanium. I hope that becomes more popular. But right now, most are aluminum. That said, a lot of it comes down to the design. So jumping into design, we've got a couple things. Battery slash, well, the location, but also to a degree what type of battery. And then also the shape and the architecture. So talking about battery, talking about location, this has a little tray, slides out the side. You can swap out the battery. Some optics, and it was more common before, less and less optics are doing this now, is to make it, I'm assuming this is why they did it, to design it thinner so it sat lower. They basically had it to where the battery was attached on the bottom, so you would take the optic off every time you'd replace the battery. Of course, then you would have to re-zero it, or at least I strongly recommend you re-zero it, and go from there. Now, that's led to problems with the design, such as there being short or other mechanical failures, electrical failures, that resulted in, like Trijicon sometimes has in the RMR, the disappearing dot. To me, that's a really big problem. Again, it goes back to usability. I can't use it if it's not durable, if it's not reliable, etc., etc. So, battery location is a big one. Companies have moved with their battery from one place to another, such as the original Acro had a battery in one place. It wasn't a very good battery, a lot of complaints. They moved it. So now the version 2 has the battery compartment in a different location, allows for a larger battery. So you have a more effective pistol red dot. Now on architecture. Well, I will say, as much as I don't recommend buying one, which I know people are going to light me up in the comments about this, I don't recommend buying an RMR. And it might have been different back in the day when they first came out. Let's talk about that. Let me explain my reasoning. Now that there's enclosed optics, I see no point for anyone to ever buy an RMR. And mainly because my sample size, 3 out of 3 people I've known, have had to send them back. On top of that, I was watching a T-Rex Arms video. He had one go down, shrugged it off like no big deal. I see he still uses RMRs a lot, although I'm seeing other optics sneak in. I think that's because RMR has been outpaced. Now we get into price. So, I kind of touched on this earlier, but Good ones are going to be more expensive. That's just how it is. Of course, in this day and age, I think a lot of people, especially my generation younger, and I support this, are sticking with one gun versus having 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guns, and then having one you concealed carry, and that's the one you use the most, and you may or may not even shoot it the most. People are choosing one gun and sticking with it. So instead of having 20 guns that, we'll say an average of $500, so you're looking at math, don't worry about it. Anyway, a lot of money. So going from there, you're going to have one gun, so we'll call it $600 gun with $600 optic, $1,200 there. We'll add in a light for a couple $100, so $1,400. Versus if you have 4 guns at $500 a pop, that's $2,000. So there you go. Sell some guns, do whatever. Point is, think about your weapon system and how you're going to set it up and what you're setting it up with, how much money you're spending, all that. Going back to price, the Holostons are aggressive. I'm going to give it to them. Vortex and Holoston have amazing military discounts. They're not the only reasons I buy their products, but that is a big factor. That said, if they weren't good, I wouldn't buy those optics. If you will notice, I'm a big Vortex optic fan. Here sits a Holoston. Price was pretty competitive, but it came down to architecture. If Vortex had an enclosed sight, I would probably take a hard look at it. Not just because of Vortex, but good warranty, great customer service, all that. Not that Holoston is any different. Moving on. So, talking iron sights. For me, iron sights are pretty much a requirement on a defensive weapon. They're also extremely necessary to practice with for quite a few reasons. One, keep in mind that you can get kind of sloppy practicing your presentations with a red dot. Keeping practicing good, you're going to keep on it, but you can get kind of sloppy. So, doing iron sights is going to help you stay true to it, and they're not going to be as forgiving. So, the other thing I want to say is do research on the whole package. So, I have the mounting plate here. All I heard was Glock MOS mounting plates were trash. I didn't want to find out for myself, especially the cost of a black eye. So I got a CHPWS one right here. I've never heard a negative thing about them. I've had great fortune with them with the several hundred rounds I put through here so far, maybe over 1,000. And there's been no loosening or anything, and all I've really done is just use a torque wrench to install it correctly. So, big fan of CHPWS. Anyway, whatever mount you use, maybe you're using an FN, which doesn't necessarily call for a aftermarket mount. And I know I just talked about getting something to improve something that should work brand new. I know, but it's kind of caveat there with being a Glock MOS system. I'm not going to go on the tangent about why I kind of went against my own, but there's always an exception to the rule. Here's my exception. The Trijicon RMR, not my exception. That's all I'll say about that. Now, back to what I was talking about. So, research your whole package that you're going to put together. Plate, iron sights, gun, optic. And what I mean by that is some optics are going to be taller and shorter in terms of the window you're looking through. So these are Ameriglo 3X or X3 height sights. I see them very well over the base portion of the red dot, and no problems there. Now, some, especially depending on the plate, depending on the optic, everything sits lower. You could do, just 2 times normal height. The other thing is the measurements are going to be different, especially front to back. So if you look up the stats for the height of the rear sights of Trijicon, the rear and the front sights, compare them to the options from Ameriglo, they're going to be different. I want to say the front sights are different. I don't remember how, but the rear is the same. And that said, Ameriglo has a huge array, depending on what sight. You could go 9 times, or they're that big. I could probably put that on my Glock 40. So the point is that I wouldn't get too big of sights, but I would want to find something that co-witnesses well, especially based on your preference, because everyone has different preferences. So shooting a Glock, it was relatively easy to see images of what I'd be looking through. So it is kind of a complex thing to do research on, but it's well worth it. I'm going to roll in some of my own photos of the optic and how it sits with different iron sights on a couple of different my guns. Granted, they're both Glocks, and that's just it. I shoot Glocks for simplicity, but that's a whole nother video. So, moving on. I do want to add one reason that the other main reason to have iron sights is if your red dot fails. So that's kind of obvious, but I naturally forgot to mention it earlier. So whether your red dot runs out of battery or your red dot fails because something happened to it, maybe it got shot, I don't know. But the point is that having backup iron sights is really great. Next, so electronics. Let's talk electronics and failure. Electronics do fail. However, there's an interesting rule of thumb that someone once said to me, and when I reflected back in my life, I think it's very true. And I paid close attention ever since they said it, and it's still true. And by rule of thumb, that doesn't mean it's always the thing, but more often than not, it's the case. And that's if an electronic is going to fail, it will do it very soon after you get it. If it's not going to fail, then it won't fail. So what I mean by that is you get a new optic, and relatively soon it will fail. And you'll know, okay, that was just not a good one. Like, electricity is weird. Anyway, if you get an optic and it hasn't failed, and you have it for a long time, the chances are it's not going to fail, and you're going to be able to push it to the point of its limits, and of course that's when it would fail, because you're hitting its design limits. But the point is, some people buy something and it's a dud. A dud is going to happen early on, not later. I'm only bringing that up to help you kind of, if you buy something and have issues with it, especially in terms of red dot, like this video suggests, that's going to help you figure out the problem or what you should do with it. So again, if you have a failure earlier on, probably going to be within a warranty period, you're going to be able to send it back and get it fixed. Now, if it's not going to fail and you get out of warranty, or it hasn't failed and you get out of warranty, you're probably going to be good. So if that makes you feel better, good. Next, so let's talk concealed carry. So it's pretty common for people to carry a gun like this. It's HKP30SKS, technically. And I would say this is even a little big for what people are going to now. How they're going to like the 365 and guns like that. But anyway, it's relatively small. So people will say, well, why would you add weight, height, bulk to a gun you're supposed to conceal? Well, first of all, in this day and age, it's getting pretty easy to conceal full-size guns. That's why I don't even have my chopper grip on here right now. Thanks to an LAS concealment holster, I found a way to conceal this full-size gun pretty well. But even then, you're really not adding, and we'll go this way, you're really not adding very much. And the other thing is, if you have a grip like this, it's because it's coming out this way too far to conceal. However, if you're putting an optic on this end, it's just kind of going the other way off of what I would call the axis of concealment. Yes, I made that term up. I don't think anyone else uses it. But this is what's going in the holster and what's tucking into your waistline. This is probably sticking out. So if you stick something out the other way, and especially as I just demonstrated, only a little bit, to me it's not really adding much, if any, noticeable weight. It's really not making it any harder to conceal, especially when you're already worried about something that sticks out way farther on this end. So mounting, and this is, we're almost there. First of all, methods. There's mill versus plate, or basically Glock has an MOS plate, FN has whatever plate. It's a mounting plate. So you can either get your slide cut, so slide of it, and you can do it to pretty much any gun. You can have someone machine out down here, and they can add an optic, and they're going to have to make that machining match a footprint. And the good news is there's really only like 3 to 5 different footprints. So for instance, the Hollow Suns, with the exception of the 509, they match the RMR. So if you get something milled for an RMR and you decide you want a Hollow Sun, you can do that. Now if you get something milled for an RMR and you decide you want a Vortex pistol red dot, you can't really do that. If you do an adapter, I don't know what that would look like, but certainly not easy, and I don't hear about it often. So the benefit of going with a factory setup where it involves a mounting plate, even though it adds a little thickness, is versatility. Because I have the Glock MOS system, I can pretty much mount any optic ever as long as someone makes a plate for it that goes from Glock to whatever the optic is. So, and with companies like CHPWS around, that's probably always going to be a feasible thing. The only exception was I was shocked, absolutely blown away, that no one makes a Glock to 1913 MOS adapter. Blown away. Well, obviously somebody makes it. I got it off Boatch.com, but I couldn't tell if they were the manufacturer, what the story was. I haven't fired it yet. It only cost $20, so that does make me a little nervous. I'll probably wear a face shield when I fire it. But either way, that would be the exception to what I'm saying. Funny that this video is exposing all kinds of rules and their exceptions. So, but for the most part, your normal optics, a company like CHPWS is going to make a plate for. So that's your big difference there. Now, so stability versus versatility is really it. Also, some people, and I understand this, want their optic to ride lower. Milling is going to do that, again, because you don't have the thickness of the plate. Now, cost. At first, it looks a lot more expensive to mill your gun, but at the end of the day, it depends on how you look at it, because it is, I want to say, not quite $100 more to get an MOS version of a Glock than the normal version. Well, for me, it's no debate that I'm going to get a CHPWS plate with that gun. Well, with the optic that I put on it. So that adds about another $60 to $80. So you're looking at almost a couple $100, which is about what it costs to mill or near there. So that is something to consider. Now I'm probably going to stick with the MOS setup that I've been doing. Thus far, I've 2 guns technically set up that way, and it seems to be working. Now brands, who do you go to mill? So obviously you've got the gun brand itself, so Glock has milled this. Then you're going to have other companies, Great Plains Precision, Great Plains Guns. They have a precision range, they're SOT, FFL, and they're gunsmiths, so they do a great job milling. No, I've not had them mill for me, because again, I'm buying MOSs. So, moving on, the other option is plate manufacturer. So kind of the in-between is CHPWS. Again, I keep repping them. They have no idea who I am. I don't know if they've even liked a photo of mine on Instagram, but that's okay, because they make a great product, and that's what I care about. They also have great customer service, because I've called and asked questions. So, CHPWS, so they're kind of an in-between, because you're not milling your Glock, but at the same time you are going to another source to mount your optic. The close. Overall, I would still consider red dots on handguns to be a new thing, but it is quickly gaining popularity, and for good reason. Personally, I find using a red dot on my pistol has had a good impact, and is something I will probably keep doing. I have made significant gains in capability while giving up very little, if anything. This has been James Donaldson with the Contemporary Gentleman, and until next time, keep your composure.